What are the DNA differences between Celtic and Germanic peoples, and how different are they? Now, Celtic today conjures up places in the Atlantic fringe, such as Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Cornwall and Brittany. But in the ancient world, the peoples Greek and Roman writers call Celts lived much further east, even as far as the Galatians and modern Turkey for a time. As far as their origins, the traditional view traces Celtic culture back to the Hallstatt and La Tène cultures of Central Europe, which take their names from places in Austria and Switzerland. Yet another theory places the Celtic roots earlier and further west, in the Atlantic trading zone, linking Britain, Ireland, Iberia and parts of France. Either way, Gaul became the home of Celtic civilization in the ancient world, centred around modern-day France, parts of Belgium and other countries. It was only when Julius Caesar and Rome conquered much of the continental Celts did Celtic identity contract to the Atlantic fringe we recognise today. Germanic peoples, by contrast, emerged from the northern edge of Europe, around southern Scandinavia and the northern German plain, with roots usually connected to the Nordic Bronze Age and the Yastov culture. The Romans defined this world from the outside as well. Caesar treated the Rhine as the boundary between Gaul and the Germani, while Tacitus described Germania as the land beyond the Rhine and north of the Danube. From there, Germanic-speaking groups expanded into peoples like the Goths, Franks, Saxons, Angles and Lombards. And I should note for this video, when I'm referring to Germanic peoples, I'm referring to the continental Germanic world, i.e. Germany, the Low Countries and the North Sea coast, rather than Scandinavians and the Vikings in particular. Yet many Germanic peoples, such as the Goths, trace their origin back to Scandinavia, so there is this link that we'll touch on shortly as well. And of all the places where Celtic and Germanic culture and peoples combined, England is probably the most interesting example. Celtic Britons lived there for centuries before the Anglo-Saxons arrived, and ultimately gave England its name, leaving the fusion of cultures from Cornwall in the west to East Anglia on the other side, and this still shows up in DNA markers to a large degree. But what are the DNA differences? Well, the first one lies in their ancient ancestry. Although Celtic and Germanic people share a lot of deep ancestry, they're quite similar genetically when it comes to their ancient ancestry. Germanic populations tend to carry a thin extra layer of Scandinavian hunter-gatherer ancestry, which was a blend of Western and Eastern hunter-gatherer lines. This is largely missing in the Atlantic Celtic fringe, where the hunter-gatherer signal is almost entirely Western hunter-gatherer. It is a faint signal rather than a dividing line. But Eastern hunter-gatherer ancestry grows the closer you get to Scandinavia. And as another important point of interest, this ancient Eastern hunter-gatherer migration is thought to have been a key vector for the spread of blonde hair into Europe, since European blonde hair likely originated in Siberia in the east. And this feeds into another difference between the two: hair colour. On average, Germanic populations tend to have slightly higher levels of blonde hair, while Celtic populations have higher rates of red hair and freckles. But why is this? Well, as noted, Germanic people's proximity to Scandinavia is likely one reason for higher blonde hair rates, since Scandinavia saw a massive influx of Eastern hunter-gatherer ancestry in ancient times. And I have actually covered this in more depth in my video on Swedish DNA and the evolution of blonde hair. As for why red hair is so common among Celts, isolation and genetic drift are likely key factors. Places like Ireland and Scotland have remained genetically isolated for centuries, or relatively so. In environments like these, genetic drift, combined with founder effects, can make rare variants far more common over time. Now, when it comes to the DNA differences between Celtic and Germanic peoples, the largest is in Y DNA haplogroups, passed from father to son. But quickly, before we look at this, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep. Now, these videos take a lot of time and energy to make. That's why getting a good night's sleep is essential. And that's where Manta Sleep comes in. Now, Manta Sleep specialise in making premium quality sleep masks and accessories. From the Manta Sound to the Manta Silk Mask, all their masks are engineered to be 100% blackout, adjustable and comfortable around your eyes. They also have other great products, such as the Manta white noise machine, which plays 15 soothing soundscapes, from brown noise to relaxing ocean waves. Please click the top link in the video description below to find out more information, and use the code HISTORY at checkout to get 10% off your order. They also have a summer night sale running until the 5th of July, where you can get up to 20% off. Thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video, and now on with the rest of the video. Now, when it comes to the more Celtic connected Y-DNA haplogroups, R1b U152 is a key continental Celtic marker with ancient roots. It is tied to the iron-working Hallstatt and La Tène cultures of Central Europe, and it is sometimes called the Italo-Celtic branch today. If you look at this map, you can see it peaks in the parts of northern Italy and around the Alps today, as well as in Switzerland and western Austria. And it's worth noting that in ancient times, Cisalpine Gaul in northern Italy was inhabited by the Celts. U152 is also elevated in modern France, the heartland of ancient Gaul, and declines sharply as you move north into central and northern Germany. Now, another key Celtic marker is R1b L21. Originating in the Bronze Age, this lineage defines the insular Celts, and its frequency today forms a near-perfect genetic gradient, peaking in Western Ireland, the Scottish Highlands, Wales and Brittany. If we lay that next to the map of the countries that still speak Celtic languages today, the overlap is striking, and several branches of L21 stand out further as well. RM222 is very high in Ireland and parts of Western Scotland, and is concentrated in lineages tied to many early medieval Irish dynasties. RL1065 is another branch of L21 common in Scotland, and connected to clans such as Campbell and MacLaren. And R1b DF27 deserves a mention too. It's not strictly a Celtic marker, but Iberia was home to Celtic peoples at points in its history, where it peaks today. And DF27 remains relatively common across the same Atlantic zone, where Celtic culture flourished and may have first emerged. All three of these subclads descend from the same upstream marker, R1b P312. And let me know your Y-DNA marker if you know in the comments below. Now, Germanic peoples, on the other hand, carry a fundamental different suite of paternal markers. The most important is R1b U106, the West Germanic marker and the direct genetic cousin to those Celtic lineages. U106 and P312 are the two main branches of R1b L151, with these branches emerging around 3000 BC or so, one becoming the dominant Germanic lineage, and the other giving rise to many subclads connected to Celtic ancestry that we just covered there. Now today, U106 peaks heavily in the Netherlands, northwestern Germany and Denmark, and it is also very high in England thanks to the Anglo-Saxon migration. A subclad of U106, known as RL48, is especially significant for the Anglo-Saxon story. It peaks in Frisia and North Holland, territories historically tied to the Saxon and Frisian tribes who settled in eastern and southern England. Now, another major lineage connected to Germanic peoples is I1. Although this peaks in Scandinavia, it is also found in elevated levels in places like the Netherlands and Germany. And some subclans of I1 lean more Western Germanic, such as I1Z58, which compared to other branches of I1 is higher in places like Germany and the Netherlands. In England today, the main I1 line is Z58, the West Germanic branch connected to the Anglo-Saxons. Now, another difference between the two is in disease rates, and one of the clearest examples of this is hemochromatosis, also known as the Celtic curse. This appears at especially high levels in Ireland, Scotland, the Hebrides, and other Atlantic fringe populations. Ireland also has unusually high rates of cystic fibrosis and certain rare metabolic disorders, likely the product of founder effects and long periods of relative isolation. Germanic people share many of the same broader Northern European risks, but generally, they don't show the same extreme Scottish and Irish pattern for these inherited conditions. So although there are many similarities, there are differences between Celtic and Germanic peoples, with Y DNA haplogroups one of the clearest examples. But what are the 7 oldest Scottish clan surnames still in use today? Well, to find out, please click here. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and hit the bell, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and also check out Manta Sleep, the top link in the video description. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.